Neither. How are you? Oh man, I'm hunky dory.
How much money have you brought in? No.
I didn't spend it because it's all my own science supplies.
Oh no, for your job at the time. It's all your old science from last semester.
Yeah.
Just repurposing it. I actually received a bunch of science. I don't think it was from that. I think it was from Lawrence. And got a bunch of them.
Yeah, you like
and I repainted them. Yeah.
I think last year somewhere in that zone.
Do you feel proud of your work? That's cool.
I hate losing. I just found out.
No. You're competitive?
I hate not getting stuff.
Yeah.
I found out we didn't get basically $1 million for a crusher for the landfill.
Wow. That sucks. I think having like you there is gonna be like the equivalent of us having like, I mean you've been there for a while now, but having the grant administrator here and the work that he's done to procure grants, like I think it's been super helpful because there's just like not a lot of capacity for individual departments to do that.
The county has like the opposite problem of us, where we have departments write grants, but then there's no grant management. So that's the thing I'm working on now is like building out the grant management.
Exactly. Yep. People don't believe in management and stuff.
Yeah, there's certainly something like that.
Yeah. I gotta reposition.
I hate it when they make me change my passwords.
Water before this, and it always gives me like.
I never do.
So once you're
Man, I'm not. I'm gonna go like do a bunch of zoo gallery event stuff. That's like just to have fun and not stay off like playing anything.
sounds like
I was, but when I went up to commissioner and then I went up to the other guy, it just like it didn't land. Like I was like, clearly you guys have this all figured out. Yeah. Hi.
Hi.
Yeah, but I'm like, I don't know, just after talking with them, I'm just like, yeah. Yeah.
That's what friends are for.
Yeah.
That's how you get friends.
Well, I feel like, I don't know, I think if they had responded differently, but maybe it was just that setting, but maybe my opinion wouldn't have changed, but I think I'm gonna, I don't know, I've got like the Kiva board wanting me to join them, and I'm like, I'm gonna be traveling for work the next day. That's another reason too, like, the council's like, take some time. Yeah. Yeah, I'm trying. I've pulled back from a lot of stuff just because I need to refocus on like, my family and like my physical and mental health and
Hey.
stuff. So. But yeah, maybe next year or something. Rushing a little bit.
A lot, yeah. It's been a really busy day. We had like some Ute tribal members out in the forest today for an ethnographic study, and then I had a 1-year-old's birthday party outside until this moment. So, but I did get to have some dominoes and cake.
Yeah, that's great. Catch your breath. We still have a couple minutes. We have 1 minute. Catch your breath in 1 minute.
It's really hot in this house, so I feel very flushed.
You look very
I know,
flushed,
my
yeah.
face, I can feel my face is like bright red.
station here right now. I'm gonna go ahead and admit these guys. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome everyone to the Cortez City Council Work Session Special Meeting. Today is Tuesday, March 12th, 2024. The time is 6:30 p.m. Just want to let folks know that Mayor Medina is excused for today, and I will be chairing as Mayor Pro Tem. We'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. The first item on our agenda is the Colorado Department of Transportation CDOT presentation. And as you step up to the mic, there's a little button at the base. Yep.
All right. Not my first rodeo. All right, welcome. Thank you. I'm Julie Constant. I'm the Region 5 Transportation Director. With me today, I also have David Payton, who's here in the audience. He is our resident traffic engineer. I believe Jennifer Allison is online, who is our traffic and safety program engineer. And then Ben Achimovich should be online as well. And
sorry, can you lean in just a little bit closer to the mic?
Sorry.
Or if the other mic's easier, yeah.
let me do this. So, okay, David Payton, resident traffic engineer, is here with me today. Online, we have Ben Achimovich and Jennifer Allison. Jennifer is our program engineer. Ben Achimovich is with our state headquarters office and is the gentleman that actually was behind the speed study we'll be discussing this evening. So Ben, is it possible for Ben to go ahead and share his screen in the presentation that he'd like to walk you guys through?
Yes.
Okay. You're up, Ben. I can see you.
Excellent. Thank you for having me. Can everyone at the council meeting see the presentation?
We can, Ben.
Yeah, I'm hearing a little bit of an echo, so hopefully that declines. Okay, good. Thank you for having me. This is the presentation about speed management in Cortez on State Highway 491 and US 160. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about CDOT's new speed management process, and then go step by step through our two studies and why they are two studies. And then I'll take any of your questions that you have. All right. So starting in the mid-1960s, speed studies were authorized by the Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices. It was very heavily weighted on the 85th percentile. And that means the speed 85% of cars are either going at that speed or below it. It did, in fact, raise more speeds than lowered speeds or kept speeds the same, mainly because as we moved forward from the 60s into the 70s, 80s, and now, cars have gotten faster, they've gotten bigger, engines have gotten a lot more powerful, and including with the advent and proliferation of electrical vehicles, cars have just gotten faster. Speeds were generally only lowered if there was a good case, so adverse geometry, or if there were crashes in a speed-related pattern. Now, speed-related patterns also have a couple interesting facts about them that we've seen in the data. Most speed-related crashes have one other factor, whether it's impairment, emotional distress, road rage, for instance, or distraction when those accidents occur. But regardless, speed-related crashes have become more and more of a problem as we've gotten into the 21st century. This old system was more reactive. If there was a crash or there was an issue, then we would lower the speed or change something about the roadway to lower the speed. And it did, however, help us see that signing down posted speed limits does not work. Boulder County had City of Boulder had a very good study done after they unilaterally lowered all their speeds from between 25 and 30 on their local roads to 20 miles per hour to sign those down. And what they found was speeds did not go down that much, only about 2 miles per hour. Crashes did not go down, fatalities did not go down, and what went up was the amount of citations they were writing. So we know from the data that signing it down does not work. Our new speed study process aligns more with what the Manual of Uniform Traffic Control 11th edition language is, which is more a contextual approach. We look at everything that the roadway has on it, whether it's the geometry, curb and gutter. We look at alike roads, so if a road through Cortez and a road through Durango have the same purpose and same geometry, we want to make sure we're setting speeds in a very consistent manner across those characteristics. We look at the environment. We look at commercial areas. We look at residential and commercial mixes. We look at, does it go through a residential area that's primary residential, a main street of a town or city? We want to look at urban or rural, and we want to look at what the setting is of that area. And then, of course, we look back at crashes. We're looking very much at a deeper look. So if there's a crash pattern, we're now looking at every intersection. We're looking at every segment. And our new process separates segments out. So sometimes we'll have, in this case, we'll have a lower access area on a roadway, and then it'll go into a main street or residential area, then a main street area, and then back out to a rural roadway. And that happens a lot in our rural towns. And that's why we have this new process, is we want to set speeds per segment and look at them segment by segment and not look at it as just one roadway. We also are looking at all past studies. We look at them very carefully about how they were set. And what we're finding is the majority were set with the 85th percentile back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. And we're moving away from that now. We're also looking at, with our new process, to have a Colorado expert tool. And what that is it's a spreadsheet where you can put data and context from the segments and split the segments up and get a speed out of it to support or not support the engineering decision. So we're looking at that. We're looking closely at our tool. We're actually version 4. We're moving to version 5 with some national tools that came out in draft form, and we're making sure we're aligned with them and making sure our tool is a lot more progressive with looking at context. Sorry about that. The speeds and speeds are appropriate for the purpose and the geometry and the context of the roadway. And we're also getting new technology. One thing you'll be seeing on the side of the roads coming in the next year is compliance studies. There are our new type of speed study where we'll be bringing out traffic data collectors and making those available to our traffic engineering regions to get data from the streets. So we're getting more data, especially in the areas where we've lowered speeds. We want to see how the compliance is and if it's working. This is the language from the new MUTCD. It's far more extensive than the draft language or anything else that's ever been in the MUTCD. And one thing this does is it brings speed data and operating speeds, speed distribution, even with everything else. So we can no longer just say, that's the 85th percentile, that's the speed. We have to look at everything, context, environmental, and geometry, all at the same time and with the same weight, and then use our engineering judgment to make those speeds, set those speeds. All right, here is kind of this is the outline of our new process. It's far more in depth than we used to have. We now get an application from those local agencies who want us to study a segment of the roadway or a roadway, and we ask them to put in context data, geometry data, and work with their region traffic engineers to talk to us about what they want. It's a little bit better than saying, hey, just lower the speed. Instead, it's lower the speed, and here is our view, our input to your speed setting process. Then we do a mini operations evaluation, which is just looking at all the data we can get from an engineering perspective and a roadway perspective. Then we go out and we do field work, video logs and field logs where we have our team drive the road in both directions. They look at every sign. They verify a lot of the data that we do in our engineering applications and our contextual applications. And then we get speed data. We do curve runs if there's curves, and then we validate the context and all the other data. So we know, yeah, it is exactly what we saw or not in the data that we originally had. Then we do a comprehensive data analysis. While one team does the CAD drawings and creates the strip maps that we have, and those are our straight line drawings of our roadways, the engineering team looks at everything we have so far and does an engineering analysis with our tool. We look at other roadways, and we really try to make a great data-driven recommendation while taking the context into you know, and that's when we also segment the roadways and say, okay, this is one type of roadway, this is another type of roadway, this is a different context, and we really need to look at why that has to be different. Then we evaluate our speed recommendations, and with those speed recommendations, we make a speed recommendation for every individual segment. One of our recent pilots had 12 segments through Loveland, and so we were looking at every segment for different speeds and different contexts. We give reasons and data for why we set those speeds, and then in partner with the region, we make recommendations for managing your speeds. So what could we look at? How could we manage those speeds better to get to natural compliance? This is just our pre-field work and how we take the engineering analysis and give it to our technicians. These are some of the tools we use, especially for data. We used to use roadway radar guns, and then we went to windshield mounted radar guns, and then recently we've gone to traffic data controllers, which give us an enormous amount more of data than we used to have, and also give us better data because they don't see us out there with either radar guns or sitting in a white unmarked car thinking, okay, there's a police officer going to give me a ticket. So this is allowing us to get better data, especially with speeds and or speeding. So then we have a final engineering analysis where we make the recommendation. We look at the current development. We talk to the region engineers and we say, okay, what do you guys see? Here's what we see. And then we do something called speed ranges. We've done this a few times on pilots where we say we can't lower the speed or we can only lower the speed so much. We could get the speed down to X, but to do that we would have to do a few steps, whether roundabouts, whether designing the roadway down to a target speed. That's something that we are moving forward with on different roadways throughout the state. Do you have any questions about the speed management process itself?
No questions.
Okay. So we split so we had 2 segments submitted to us by Region 5. The first segment was State Highway 491B between milepost 26.2 and 28. Here is the speed data we have. The posted speed limit in the first segment is 35, and you can see speeds, the 50th and 85th are within 5 miles per hour of the speed limit. This is typically a good thing. We don't see a 12 or 13 above the speed limit. In Boulder, we did a pilot, and they routinely were getting 13 to 15 miles per hour above the speed limit for the 85th percentile. So this is more of a normal situation. This is a better situation. So it's showing us the roadway is keeping speeds within 5 miles of the 85th. Not saying it's a good speed. I'm saying this is what the speed data shows.
Hey, Ben, and for
yes.
context for the city council members that don't have mileposts memorized like us CDOT nerds do, milepost 26.2 to 27.2 is basically the intersection where 491 and 160 comes together, and 491 peels off to the north and west. So it's that first piece as you're coming out of the intersection headed up towards Utah. Sorry, Ben.
No worries. Thank you, Julie. Thank you, Julie. We also do extensive safety analysis. So this is the safety analysis for the section of 491. We look at everything here. We look at if that's, we see here that we have a lot of wild animal hits is the top one, and then rear ends and side swipes are the next two. But we look at everything. We also get the Excel spreadsheet data that says, okay, what speed were these accidents? Where were the accidents? That really allows us to dial down any problem or dial down to any problem areas. And this is how we segment. So this is where we didn't have any speed changes. We looked at the 2 speed segments with our tool, and the first segment is a little lower, a little south of Main Street, going north on North Broadway, and that is the 35 mile per hour area, and then 45 as it starts to leave town, and then 55 as it heads north out of Cortez. So the segment 1 was more urban, arterial, and developed, and then segment 2 was more suburban, undeveloped as it leaves the town. Notice we didn't say rural here. That's why we look at these rural towns a little differently now. We actually extend it to a more urban, suburban setting, especially when there's houses or businesses on the north side of town. It's the same one, but so here is the 35 mile per hour that we looked at. This is very typical for an arterial statewide, not just in rural towns. We have medians, we have great striping and signing. We have, as we move forward, great sight distance. We can see forever going down here, going down the roadway. Again, this curve is a little bit designed a little bit lower than the speed, but you can still see around it, and you still have medians, good lighting, and good sides of the road. Again, here we go up the hill at milepost 27, and we're going up the hill. We're still great sight distance. You can see everything. It's a great wide, and this is very indicative of a lot of our roads that civil engineers design, roadway engineers design. Nice and wide, flat. You can see it everywhere, and that is. It also does. It does make speeding issues in some cases. Here, not so much. Here, the 85th was about 49 miles an hour. I'm going the wrong way. So that was the end of that. This is leaving town, and this is another reason why we did suburban, because you have the maintenance shed there, you have commercial around this area. We just didn't think it was rural, and we didn't want to call it that. The next section is State Highway 160A, which was south of Main Street. You can see here that speeds are a little higher through the 40 mile per hour than we like to see. It's starting to get up 47 miles an hour. And then closer to the south, you're getting to, or closer to the north, you're getting closer to within 5 miles of the 85th percentile. This segment did have a fatality, and I did talk to Jen and Julie and Dave about this fatality. We had a lot of discussions, especially with the rear ends, which are indicative of people not are indicative of intersections and stopping for turns. So those were two of the things that we talked about extensively. And then here's how we segmented it. This part of the roadway is much more rural in the south part, but we still called it suburban developed, and to the way south. And then in between the two suburban sections, we did have a rural freeway with limited access highway that we see in a lot of different places in Colorado. And then we get to farther north, we get into Cortez, where the speed goes from 40 to 35 in the transition zone, and then down to 30 miles an hour when you get downtown. And this is southbound, so it goes back out 35, 40, 55, and then back down to 45 further south. And this is also a reason we're doing this more contextual approach. We're actually looking farther out from our boundaries to make sure that if we do lower speed or raise the speed or keep the speed the same, we're not negatively impacting other areas. And so this is headed northbound into Cortez. Again, median, good shoulders, good sight distance, good lighting. Good lighting, and great. It's a very typical arterial in a lot of our cities. So with all of that, we made the decision not to change speeds in any of the segments. Any questions?
I have some comments. I've lived in Cortez all my life, and did you do a wreck survey or an accident survey on that roadway?
Yes, we did.
Okay. You were quick to point out that there is a good roadway coming up from south in Cortez, and you showed a pretty picture of the median. What you didn't show is the unlighted portion that comes up from the bridge all the way up to Main Street at 55 miles an hour, then turns to 50 miles an hour. In that stretch, there's 13 private driveways, several go into residences and many go into businesses. If you go out to the casino, you have one turn to the right that is and then you have two coming in north, and it's a 45 mile an hour speed zone, and they have lights, they have a median, and they're well protected, yet they're down to 45. And you're comparing us to Boulder, Loveland, and Denver. We're not Boulder, we're not Denver, we're not Loveland, we're Cortez, Colorado. I think the people of Cortez know what we need, and for some reason, CDOT feels that they have so much mathematicians and smart that they know better than we do what we need. My wife has to go in for major surgery on May 6th because she was hit on Broadway by a vehicle traveling 55 miles an hour. And she was injured severely. And that's been years ago. It hasn't changed. It's the same way. She was rear-ended again on Broadway from another vehicle just recently. Did you do a wreck survey or an accident survey on that stretch of road?
Yes, I did. Yes, we did. This is the survey for that up on the screen.
Okay, I apologize. We can't see it. It's too small. And I know that's not your fault.
I can make this available to you, council member.
That would be great if you could send that to us. Is there a reason why the casino has better protection than the city of Cortez?
I didn't even know there was a casino out there. We don't look at anything to do with private businesses for any sort of speed setting or speed zoning at all.
It's on a major highway. It's on 160.
But we treat all businesses the same. So if it's commercial, it's commercial. If it's out on the highway, it's out on the highway. Now, there is, if the casino, when it was developed, if it did design that area and they had a professional engineer stamp that area to a lower speed, that is something that my unit at headquarters doesn't do anything about, but that's probably been out there for a while. I don't know when the casino was built, but that is another avenue if they design the roadway around their development in a different way, and that goes for all developments, rural, urban, anywhere. That's the way to set the speed down.
That highway coming into Cortez is the exact same highway that they have a 45-mile-an-hour speed limit sign on and zone in. It's the exact same highway. The only difference is they've constructed it so there wouldn't be any accidents with medians and lighting, and we have none of that. But yet, 55 miles an hour seems to be okay. I go into Page, Arizona, and of course you don't have anything to do with Page, Arizona, but they have a 45-mile-an-hour speed limit forever. But yet Cortez has a 55-mile-an-hour speed limit, slows down to 50 miles per hour, then goes to 45 miles per hour. In that 50-mile-an-hour zone, there are 13 exits and entrances with no control, with any kind of lines, any markings. It's just no turn lanes. You're just at your own risk. And if you've got somebody coming up behind you at 55 miles an hour, it's scary. And that road is scary. But yet, CDOT thinks that because Boulder and Denver and Loveland have this study that it should apply to everyone.
Thank you.
I'm sorry for my frustration, but it seems like there's so much red tape and bureaucracy in CDOT that common sense does not apply.
Lydia.
I think, thank you for explaining your process, but just to echo some of the frustrations of council members' role, one thing is that we're hearing from local constituents their concerns with the safety here over and over again, and we live here in the community and we're the ones facing it all the time. And so I'm just kind of wondering, besides, I saw at the very beginning you took into account some local input that kicked off the study, but how is any local input weighed into the study itself and the decisions you make?
We weigh that in contrast with the engineering behind it and the engineering decisions. By Colorado Revised Statute, I have to make an engineering decision on those roadways. I have to use the data and the science, but also the context. So when I look at a roadway, I have my technicians who are not engineers. They come out, they drive your roadway, they stay in your areas, they stay in your towns, they walk your roadways, and they're under direction to really take a look at the feel and the context of the roadway. And there have been times where they have been out in rural roads and they come back to me and say, there's no way you're not lowering the speed, and we have. This was not one of them. And that's, I take into all those contexts. I've actually been out on studies in rural Colorado, and I'm a native here in Colorado. I've been out to Cortez several times. I've been out to rural towns, and I do that to become familiar with what's going on out in the towns. And so the context is taken into account, but in the end, I have to make an engineering decision on the appropriate speed limits. And some of that is why we're talking to our regions and talking to our region engineers about designing down roadways.
And well, just to follow up with that, so since the decision you've made with your data is to not lower the speed limit, I guess my next question really is, well, where can we go from here? Because it's that tricky situation where CDOT is managing the main road through our small town. So it kind of makes us feel like our hands are tied and we can't help people in our community. Like, is there an in-between with different or better signage? Do you have any suggestions like that?
Absolutely, there are ways to do feedback signs. Most of those decisions are with Jen and Julie. I can make suggestions, but I usually work through them to do either temporary or other suggestions for speed infrastructure, speed management infrastructure.
So currently, we do engage regularly with the city staff, have conversations with the city staff. We've talked about some speed radar feedback signs. I'm not quite sure where that's at right now and where that's landed. We are in the process through the CDOT planning process of looking for more projects and new projects. And so we will be having conversations with city staff through our transportation planning region meetings to come up with new projects and new ideas. So if staff wants to bring ideas to the TPR about projects they want us to see us do to improve safety, we can work together on what other types of ideas we can come up with to design the road to slow people down more. This is the time and this is the process right now. We've been working with Drew and the team to have those conversations, and we will continue those conversations.
I would just like to echo what my fellow council people said, and also I had some specific questions about the intersection of West 3rd and Canyon Drive and Broadway. The speed limit's 40 miles there. There are residences within about 100 to 120 feet of the highway on the west side, and there are schools immediately on the east side. How do you take that into account, and how do students and families get from that west side safely? It's an uncontrolled intersection. There's a crosswalk, but it's 40 miles an hour. How is that a safe situation?
Well, for schools and school studies, it's a different process and it's a different kind of study. And those are usually ones to establish school zones and school crossings along major roadways. What we look at there is, are students crossing in the AM and PM, and if they are, that is definitely something we would want to know. And we definitely can, if you all want us to come out, is take a look at that. We've done that before. School zones are looked at more often than not when we do set speeds, if they're in close vicinity, and we did see that. I believe you're talking about Mesa Elementary School. That's a few blocks east. If I'm looking at it correctly on my map.
Yes, as well as the middle school and the fields.
Yeah, I do see those. Typically on those, we definitely want students to cross at intersections. And we do look at that, and we did in this case. I'm looking at my report right now, and they did drive down 7th and look at where the school was and measure how far away from the intersection it was.
How far is the nearest lighted controlled intersection from that intersection, from that crossing?
The one at 7th. There is one at 7th and Broadway, just west of the school. And from the middle school, so that is from which one were you? Oh, from the middle school up north?
Yeah, I was just looking from that crossing at Canyon Drive and Broadway onto West 3rd. Where's the closest lighted, controlled place where a pedestrian could cross safely?
It's about, if I'm measuring correctly, it's about 1,800 feet south.
And further west, away from where they would be going. Thank you.
What does that process for the school district area study, what does that look like? And how long does that take?
If we're going to do a school study and do it now, we would definitely want to get that in because we have 2 months left of the school year, and we wouldn't be able to get back out there until September. So that'd be something we want to do immediately if you'd like us to take a look at that intersection.
I think that area is a section of concern. There's been at least one incident where a youth was hit at that Canyon Drive crossing, and it is not safe. So with whatever immediacy you can address that area and do a little bit deeper dive, I think that would be immensely beneficial for our community. A few of the questions that I had for you were, when did these studies take place, and what was the time of year, the time of day, and then was it measuring both northbound and southbound?
This was done earlier this year, I believe over the summer. Most speed studies are done in the summer, especially since we're based in Denver. We have to get down to the western slope when it's not snowy, especially since snow slows speeds down and can skew results. So it was done this summer, I believe July, and then we finished up our results in September, October.
Any other questions from council?
Yeah, I would just like to echo that I'd like to see the schools looked at specifically, and just kind of thinking of the timing of that study too, since the schools are out, that kind of traffic wasn't happening as well. So is there a way that you kind of account for that when you're looking at a study near schools during the summer?
We don't. As part of this pilot, we knew the schools were there, and we look at crossings, and we look at what the residences look like around the schools. We don't get counts because if we do seek, the difference is if we do counts, it needs to be a school study. It could establish a school zone here, especially if even one kid crosses here. That is enough for a school study, even if the school is a couple blocks away. So that's the difference. Is a speed study looks primarily at speeds and the context for setting speeds. For a school study looks at where the kids are, who's crossing, and we'd be fine to come out there and do those counts at a 3rd and Canyon and see what results we can find there.
How do other council members feel about the school study? Do we feel like that's something that should be done? David, thoughts? Thoughts on the school study? What do you think about having the state look into the school area, investing a little bit more time in that section?
I think that is and should be a priority.
Okay. Other council members?
I think there already is a light there that you push a button and it blinks for a crossing. Is that not correct?
There's a pedestrian button, but
Yeah.
there's not a light. That's not controlled.
It's a
beyond
pedestrian
that.
button.
Yeah.
And I think that's what CDOT did a couple of years ago after we had that kid. Has it been after that the kid was injured? It was after. Our whole issue is the speed's it's just common sense. The speed is too fast. CDOT has scientific information that says that, no, we've decided that it's not too fast. But yet we have citizen after citizen complaining and thinking that City of Cortez can do something about it. And our hands are tied because CDOT feels that their scientific information is more knowledgeable than the people that live here. And to me, that's a sad, sad state of affairs. And I just wish that CDOT would take into consideration what the hometown feels like. I don't know that changing the speed limit is going to hurt CDOT's feelings all that much. I just don't understand why the hesitation when a community says we need this, but you say no, you don't. Somebody's wrong.
Matt?
Yeah, I just have a general question. You talked a little bit about looking at or doing an accident study. Do you include pedestrian fatalities in that, and do they hold the same weight as, let's say, somebody being rear-ended in that same section?
We do look at pedestrian crossings when we're out there, especially now that we don't have to sit and do speeds. We set up our traffic data controllers. We go, our teams look for pedestrians, they look for cyclists. We don't do counts per se, like typical engineering traffic counts for peds and bikes. But we do watch for pedestrians. We do watch for the number when we're out there. And we do bike counts when we're out on the roadways. They're less reliable, and they aren't by the traffic study book, so to speak, because those need to be done by engineers. We have technicians doing the counts, but yeah, we take that into account. We watch very closely on who's on the sidewalks and who's on bikes.
I'm sorry, I maybe misspoke. I'm talking about fatalities, pedestrian fatalities that have happened in that area over a period of time. I know of two. One was a high school student who was riding his bike across and was hit and passed away, and another one was a recent high school graduate that was struck in that section that we're talking about. So fatalities, do you look at fatalities?
Absolutely. We get all of the crash data that we can. If it's a recent one, it may not. If it's a 2023 one, it may not be in our tally. But we look for the most up-to-date fatalities, and if we start seeing a pattern, absolutely, it goes into the setting of speeds. There is areas in several rural towns where we have suggested doing some temporary measures to lower the speeds temporarily while we have discussions on how to do it in a more permanent basis. Those I'm going to leave up to the traffic engineers and your Region 5 resident engineers, but there are options there.
And while it may feel like to the council that we are not listening and that we don't understand, I want you to know that we do. We are bound by Colorado state statutes that require when we set a speed limit, we have to have an engineering speed study back it up. And that's the process that Ben just talked about, was that engineering speed study. The reason behind that being, if someone gets written a ticket and there's not an engineering speed study to back it up, they can go to a court of law and they can fight whether or not that speed that was set that they got the ticket for was appropriate or not. So we, unfortunately, really don't have a choice other than to do the engineering speed studies, and the method and the process we've got now, as Ben explained, is definitely the most complex, the most inclusive of everything that we're looking at than what we've had in the past. In the past, correct me if I'm wrong, Ben, but in the places where we saw the higher speeds at that 85th percentile, we may have come back to you and said the speed limit needs to go up, which is definitely not something we want to do. So in some ways, the process is definitely changing in the right direction to at least acknowledge it should not be going up. I wish I could bring it down, I really do, but because of the state statutes that we have to operate within, that's the position we're in.
Is that process still malleable? Like, are we able to provide input, like as a government, be able to provide input on that process? Because it feels like maybe the community input piece was not as apparent, or maybe I guess I don't understand like what you all did for the community input piece. Would love to hear what that is. But is that process still malleable? Like, like, is there a way to influence that process to be more inclusive of community voice?
Ben, you want to take that one?
Yes, we've only drafted these studies. I haven't signed them. I was unaware of the other fatality. I'd like to see where that was and what the crash data shows about that. I would love to hear from you all and find out more contextually about your town and your point of view. We definitely take that into consideration, and that's why I think we're all on board of doing a school study here and seeing if there's kids crossing in this area, and that would definitely warrant a lower speed limit or could warrant a lower speed limit there.
Forgive me for sounding argumentative, but you say we want to listen to you, but there's not a darn thing you can do about it because we're doing a survey study, and if the technicians don't agree with the people, sorry, there's nothing we can do about it. And that's exactly what you just said. So the people's voice doesn't matter. It only matters what the technicians say. And I really think it's important to listen to the community and feel the pulse of the community and weigh that in with your traffic study. I'm not coming in this lightly. I was a police officer for 30 years. I know what's safe. And I can tell you, Broadway is not safe. I worked here 30 years. I know that for a fact. And our police officers can't run radar there every single day. They have other things to do. And I sound emotional because I really am. It means a lot to me. My son has a business, Mesa Verde Motorsports, on South Broadway. Every day he says, oh man, you ought to see what I saw today. And it's a constant. And as a councilman, I want to help. I want to do something about it. But when I come up to CDOT, it's no way, Jose. It's our way or no way. And I don't want to see that. I want to see something change.
Could I add something to that, Dennis? I agree 100%, and I think the consensus of the city and even the county is that there is a certain lack of transparency when communicating with CDOT. We ask for things and then we don't hear back, and that's not good.
Yeah, I would, what I'm hearing, I'm just trying to think how we can kind of move forward working together. I'm hearing a couple things. You've talked about you can work with the city on some design elements that we can have input on in that area, correct?
Yes, we will be talking projects and looking at projects with all of our region partners this summer through our planning process, and it'll be a time that we'll be engaging with city staff to see what type of projects that they would like to bring forward.
And then I think we've all stated we're in favor of that school study, and I just want to make sure it takes into account Mesa Elementary and the middle school and the roads around there. Yeah.
It's very obvious we were deeply concerned about that stretch of highway, and we want to do as much as we can to try to make it better for our community. And so we are appreciative of all the work that you all have done, and we just really want to find a way to move forward that protects our citizens and protects our youth. And so whatever we can do, if we can work together to find other solutions, I think that's really the only thing we can do going forward. And we would really be grateful for just regular communication and collaboration as much as possible. And please just know that, like, our frustrations just come from a place of the people we know have been affected by that highway section, and we just want to make sure they're safe. So thank you, and thank you for hearing some of our concerns, and we appreciate you all being here today.
Mm-hmm. And I remember my last comment now. Ben, thank you. I think I'm a social scientist and I work a lot with engineers, so I understand we see things really differently. And when you're giving me all the numbers and everything, and my thought is, well, where's the feeling and the importance from that social side? So if you have any ways where we could merge those feelings from our community more with your data, or take that into account more, we would really like to work with you on that.
Yeah, and we would love it if you could send us all, maybe send it to city manager, this presentation, and he can send it to us, because it was a little bit hard to read from a distance.
And when that school study comes in, I'm going to come down personally for this one to Cortez with my technicians and study it with them. So I'll be there with my team to hear from you and to take that into consideration.
Yeah, it'd be great if you could come on a council night, or when there's a council night, and our council members can meet you as well and your team. We would welcome that. Yeah.
I'll see what. Unfortunately, the council meetings fall on my parenting weeks most of the time. But if it ever doesn't, I will come down and meet you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. All right, council. Next item on the agenda is council general discussion. Do we have any items of discussion generally? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and close this work session, and we'll adjourn, and we will come back at 7:30 for our regular meeting. Thank you.